The Anunnaki Final Warning to Earth and Their Return in 2022, 5th edition. This is part 3. We're starting at page 73. The Anunnaki Council. I report to the Council about my years of envoyship, and I review the frightening plans for the cleansing of the Earth before the return of the Anunnaki and their plans for the complete change of the Earth. The years of envoyship have taken their toll on me. I was tired, discouraged, and worse, I began to feel old. It did not show in my appearance, which was a good thing, but I was no longer the strong young woman I used to be. This time, putting the results of my mission before the High Council and letting go of the burden and putting it on stronger shoulders would be a relief. I was not at all nervous about the meeting with the Council. I knew that I had done all I could, and more than that I could not do, unless the Council thought that there was more to accomplish. If they did, I would most certainly obey. The United States military authorities would not cooperate. The whole Council came to the meeting. No one thought that there was anything more important to do or to attend. I bowed before them and started giving my report. Basically, it was a simple one, signifying that the United States military authorities, which were the greatest part of my contacts, would not cooperate. I presented numerous reports, charts, lists, analysis, and whatever I could do to validate my findings. But in the end, it boiled down to one thing. The United States government and the military in particular were more afraid of the Greys than of the Anunnaki. Officials and military from other countries, such as England, Russia, and China, with whom I had also spoken, were no better. The fact that I had promised the officials that the Anunnaki would return and would destroy them if they continued to associate with the Greys frightened them a great deal. But they argued that no matter how you look at it, the Anunnaki have always been, physically, for 1,000 years. Their contacts and connections with the humans were not numerous, and they obviously did not care much. The Greys had been on Earth for these same thousands of years, and their technology was advanced enough to annihilate the Earth just as much as that of the Anunnaki, but they were more likely to act violently because their habitat, their experiments, and that their hopes would be threatened. The results were that I could not persuade any government to disassociate from the Greys or to trust me. At the end of the report, I bowed and sat down again, rather exhausted. All I wanted was to go home, sit under my favorite tree, have a cat or two lean against me, and wait for Marduk to come home and tell me things were not so bad. But this was not to be. The council members deliberated without opening their conduit to me, which was fine for me since I felt almost disassociated from it all. But after a short while, they opened it for our conversation. You have done well, Sinhar Ambar Anati, they communicated telepathically. We now know where we stand, and we have made our final decision. We will go back to Earth and cleanse it. Humanity is so utterly contaminated, only drastic measures can apply. How do you do that? I asked. Cleanse an entire planet just like that? It seems like a hopeless task, even for the Anunnaki. Please explain to me. I am not sure I understand your plan. Very well, said the council, but we will need to go back a little. The point you must understand is, why did the Anunnaki originally come to Earth? You know some of the reasons, but it wouldn't hurt to put everything in perspective for you. Yes, please do, I said. My fatigue had faded away completely, and I was eager to hear the details. Well, the Anunnaki did more than just come to Earth. They have created it, millions of years ago. At that time, a group of Anunnaki scientists on Nibiru, including Sinhar Inanna, Sinhar Inki, Sinhar Enlil, and others, have decided to extend their experiments in creating biological living forms. To do that, they needed a good plan and permission from the council. So they worked it out and requested a meeting. The council considered their suggestions and agreed that such work would greatly increase Anunnaki knowledge and therefore would be an excellent idea to pursue. However, they had one condition. The scientists were welcome to start working, but their laboratory would have to be off planet. The council suspected that the introduction of new life forms, even in the isolated conditions of a laboratory, might be a threat to everyone already on Nibiru. Large and small animals, and particularly people, even if they were to be created in the image of Anunnaki, could not be tolerated to wander freely on Nibiru. The Anunnaki needed a planet-sized laboratory. The scientists devoted more thought to their project and agreed that what they really needed was a planet-sized laboratory, where the creations would interact in a controlled environment without the interference of previously existing life forms. The solution, to which the council readily agreed, was to create a planet specifically for that purpose, at considerable distance from Nibiru, just in case. So the scientists went to the edge of the galaxy and caused a star to explode and created a solar system. The sun, which they named Shemesh, Sol, was surrounded by a few planets, and after a suitable amount of time, eons to humans, but nothing to the Anunnaki who can play with time as they wish, the Anunnaki went there to decide which planet would be the most appropriate. For a short time, they considered the planet humans call Mars, which at the time had plenty of water, the most important ingredient necessary for the laboratory after oxygen, but finally settled on choosing Earth. The Anunnaki fostered the evolutionary process. They went to Earth, started creating life forms, fostered the evolutionary process, and managed to accumulate an enormous amount of useful knowledge, all of which they telepathically transferred to Nibiru, Ashtari, where it was much appreciated. Unfortunately, the knowledge leaked to the Greys at Zeta Reticuli, and they decided to use humans, and sometimes cattle also, in their doomed experiments that were geared to save their own miserable race. While doing this, they sadly contaminated the pure genetic material the Anunnaki scientists so painstakingly created, and the humans that resulted were no longer suitable for the study. That was the reason why the Anunnaki deserted their research on Earth. But you have never completely deserted humans, I said. No, not completely. We kept our connection, but the Greys really dug in and made their bases, lived underwater, and we had to keep away. And Grey's DNA have created greed, violence, and unbelievable cruelty within human nature. Such characteristics were not part of the original DNA we used to create the humans. We had intended to create the humans in our image. Right now, we will assume, based on your research, that humanity is divided into 3 groups regarding their level of contamination. Yes, I said, musing. I have noticed the same thing. There are levels of contamination that make for various behavior patterns. Actually, I've noticed a lot of charts about it. Indeed, said the council, and excellent charts they are, and they give us the structure. Humanity is divided into 3 groups regarding their contamination level. The first group is those who exhibit heavy-grade DNA contamination. They include those who torture or support torture by others for any purposes whatsoever, murderers unless in self-defense, which sometimes occurs in situations such as domestic abuse by a contaminated spouse, rapists, child molesters, child abusers, senior citizen abusers, spouse abusers, those who commit violent robberies, illicit drug manufacturers, distributors, and pushers, those who engage in enslaving women, girls, and young boys in prostitution rings, criminals who use their form of religion as an excuse for their heinous crimes. This includes all religious fanatics, extremists such as suicide bombers, those who destroy lives by depriving them of ways to support themselves for their own greed. This includes the top echelon of corporate executives who have lost any sense of humanity in their treatment of thousands of people and feel that this is strictly business. Elected officials who have sold out for power and greed and who are willing to destroy their own countries to grandiose themselves. Elected officials who are willingly participating in destroying the ecology of the planet because of their close association with oil corporations and other forms of commercial energy producing countries and their corrupt rulers. Any politician, military person, or anyone else who is engaging in the trade with the Greys, allowing them to continue the atrocities in exchange for technical and military knowledge. Lawyers and judges who play games at the legal system for their own gain, sending child molesters, murderers, and other violent offenders back into society, ready to prey again on the innocent, all in the name of reasonable doubt. Those who destroy lives and reputations by identity theft, those who torment animals, these include not only people who hurt and mutilate animals for their own sick pleasure, but for those who support dogfights, cockfights, and bullfights, those who beat their horses, donkeys, or dogs, those who legally mutilate cats by removing their claws or hurting their vocal cords, owners of puppy mills who force female dogs to reproduce by animal rape, and those who abandon their animals or chain them indefinitely, sometimes allowing them to die by such neglect. Prostitutes. Extremely dangerous people, I said. I don't believe there is much chance of reforming them. None whatsoever, said the council. People who engage in such practices are doomed, as far as we are concerned. They are pure evil. The second group. Anyway, here comes the second group, people who exhibit a medium level of Gray's DNA contamination. These would include people who believe that discipline requires physical punishment in children or adults, middle echelon executives who only take orders from their supporters as their corporations are destroying the economy of their own countries to save their own skin, those who in the name of fashion and beauty have hurt countless young girls who have succumbed by eating disorders, some of whom they actually have died, while the owners and designers have made a fortune for themselves, irresponsible parents who allow their children to grow up with the Greys' values rather than human and Anunnaki values, hunters of animals who kill only for food but do not feel a joy in killing and do not mutilate or torment the animals, owners of factory farms whose animals are not deliberately tormented but live a miserable life, people who eat any form of meat, since we believe in strict vegetarian diet supplemented by milk and eggs from animals that are treated humanely and are allowed to live out their lives comfortably and die naturally. They may have some change, I suppose, I said. Not much. We still hope they will try to work on their own redemption. We offer no guarantee, of course. The third group. Then there's the third group who exhibit light Gray's DNA contamination, and they include people who are willing to advertise products that may be harmful for gain, people who are willing to import products that may be harmful for gain, people who object to social reform that may help the greater number of others, such as healthcare or better equalization of income for gain, people who are engaged in the fur trade, people who are willing to influence others through brainwash-style advertising, such as the cosmetic industries for gain, racists, sexists, and agitists who are willing to allow their prejudices to influence their behavior to others, people who are willing to spend millions of dollars on frivolous pursuits, such as a diamond-studded collar for dogs, who don't really care about anything but love and food, or $200,000 cakes for a party, while millions around them are starving. People actively engage in aggressive corporate takeovers, thus destroying the livelihoods of many. Anyone deliberately sending a computer virus for fun and games, and thus destroying other people's livelihood and property. A cataclysmic event, the Anunnaki's bubble. I assume, I said, that this is just a partial list. I can understand that. But what are your plans? What will you do with the people, with the animals? We will plan a cataclysmic event, the likes of which can hardly be imagined by humans. As we told you, we have done it before many times. Other races have destroyed some of our experiments, and sometimes only a drastic cleansing would help. We will show you one soon, a cleansing that happened a few hundred years ago on a humanoid civilization much like the humans. But first, let us explain what will happen. We will bring a bubble of a special substance resembling antimatter, but it is not destructive, and cause it to touch the Earth's atmosphere. The bubble will be exactly the same size of the planet Earth. As soon as the two globs touch, all the humans that have been lucky enough not to be contaminated by Gray's DNA, and all the animals, plants, and those inanimate materials which the Anunnaki wish to preserve, such as beautiful and historic monuments, art-filled museums, and great libraries, in addition to the homes of those saved, will be stripped from the earth and absorbed into the bubble. The fish and other animals who need water will be taken to an artificial ocean within the bubble. The birds will have plenty of space to perch on. Nothing will be hurt or damaged. The humans and the animals will feel nothing. They will be secure and comfortable within the bubble. It is unlikely that it will even retain a clear memory of the event, because we would not wish for them to be traumatized. Then the earth will be cleansed of all the pollution. For the lack of a better description, try to imagine a huge vacuum cleaner removing all the landfills, eliminating all plastics, all the dirt, all the smog from the air, and the filth from the ocean. In a few short minutes, the earth will be sparkling clean, a pristine planet, the way it was when we had first created it. Disposing of the garbage involves very high technology, which humans simply do not, as of yet, understand. The beautiful, clean planet will be ready to be repopulated, and in an instant, the humans, animals, planets, plants, and inanimate objects that were saved in the bubble will be returned to Earth. Anunnaki Guides will be there for the humans. Anunnaki Guides will be there for the humans who would naturally need quite a bit of help to adjust to the new life. But those are only the uncontaminated ones, I said. What about the others? How will they meet their fate? Those who were heavily contaminated and who were engaged in cruelty, greed, and violence for their own gain will have no chance at all. They will simply be destroyed, and there is no need to even think about them any further. What is left are those who are of medium level contamination and the lighter level. These groups will receive a warning to mend their lives now, 14 years before the event of 2022. When the event occurs, some of these people of light level contamination would have completely cleansed themselves through their efforts, and therefore would have been transferred as clean beings into the bubble. Others would have remained lightly contaminated. Those of medium level contamination, who obviously require more work, would be divided into those who had succeeded in the cleansing and had brought themselves into the light contamination level. Those who remain at medium level, who did not do the work of the cleansing properly, will be destroyed with the heavily contaminated ones. And that will remain, and all that will remain now would be the group of light contamination level. And if they wish to save themselves, they must go through Ba'abs, or stargates, into other dimensions so that they could be evaluated by the Anunnaki. If they can be cleansed, they go back to Earth. If not, they will live out their lives in another dimension, where conditions are much like our own before Earth, before the cleansing. They will lead a normal life, but will not be able to reproduce, so eventually they will die out. As for those who would succeed, passing through the Ba'abs, the procedure is extremely difficult. And this concludes pages 73 to 83.